Okay, so I have attached this file for in day 3, and what you'll find in front of you is pretty much this is just an A3 size paper. And what I've done is I've used guides to create a grid for you to use. At any time, I can show you how to hide those. You'll go up to View, Guides, and you can hide guides. And it also shows you your hotkey you can use, which is Command:, if you want to go back and forth and hide those. So you can see on my screen how I can do that just by clicking those buttons. But the grid is a guide, as we discussed. It's a guide for you to use. And then what you'll also find on the side over here are all the project guidelines. So you can always refer back to these. It talks about each thing that you want to kind of work within. Let's say that I have a specific phrase, like let's say I had the word bus, or we decided to use a specific typeface, so you can find those here. But what I like to do is just to leave these all here. We have the typeface Helvetica, right? And that's in bold, regular, and light. And what we can do is just hold down Option, and you'll notice how those the mouse kind of duplicates. And you can click and drag, and you can drag this as many times as you want to if you want to kind of play with words. So let's say let's keep this really simple. Let's say that I have the word from the poem. I can remember one thing was bus. Let's say that's my word. Now, if I keep it all together, it's going to limit me a little bit. So probably what I want to think about doing is either keep words together or or consider separating the letters. So what I could do is I could just delete B, and then I could use that same tool, the Option, hold down Option and drag, and then I could actually just create the rest of my letters. That way, if I do it this way, I'm able to manipulate each letter separately, and that could become crucial. The other thing you want to think about, we're using text, but we're also using image. And so what I've done is I've opened up one of my visual studies in Photoshop, and I know based on my project guidelines over here that I have to use grayscale. So one quick way to do that, since you guys are getting better and better at Photoshop, is to go up to Image and go up to Mode and click grayscale. What that'll do is that'll discard the color information, and now I have everything in grayscale. And I can just use it like this, or I might be able to, again, since you know how to mess with some of the layers and make those adjustments, maybe now that I see it's a little bit different in grayscale, I can go back and maybe change some of the exposure. I could even go back to levels or brightness and contrast and play around with levels. You're going to be using each other's visual studies to kind of help get some ideas. Maybe we'll do this. And then I will save that on my desktop, because now it's a file that we're all going to share. You don't have to upload it to Google Drive or anything like that. You can just use it for this project. And I can save as, and I'll just put graphic assemblage. Okay, and you can save it as a PNG, you can save it as a JPEG. You probably want to do one of those two. You don't really need to save it as a Photoshop file, because now we're working in Illustrator, so you want that file to be transferable. JPEG, PNG. I'll do PNG for now. Okay. So I'll close that, and now I'll bring my image in to my Finder. Let's see, graphic assemblage. And I can just drag that in here. Okay, now I have my image. And I can duplicate this image using that same option as many times as I want to. Maybe I want to do it several times. But I'm just going to kind of play around with this next tool I want to show you. It's called the Clipping Mask tool. Clipping Mask is really great because you can build shapes and put photos and different textures inside of shapes. Here's what I mean by that. Let's say that I click on the shape tool over in Illustrator. It's very similar. Notice how this is very similar to Illustrator. And I'll zoom in. Maybe I want to use the guide here, the grid, and I'll create a box here. okay? And what I want to make sure I do with this box is maybe it'll be helpful to me to give it a color. So I might just click over here is my other tools. So my color palette is over here, and this is the box color. Notice how there's a box and there's a fill color and an outline color. You can or a stroke, and I'm going to just make mine black so I can actually see it. And I might like start playing out just with the shapes, just to see like what can I do within the guide, within the grid. But the next thing I'll do is I'll bring my image in. Let's get these letters out of the way. It's getting messy in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my rectangle on top. It's on top of my image, okay? And whatever is behind the rectangle is what I'm going to clip. So I can move my image around to kind of figure that out a little bit. But here's what I'm going to do, and here's the fun part. I'm going to drag and select the square that I drew and my image. So they're both selected. And then I'm going to right click. And again, it's going to give me this option, make clipping mask. Okay, I'm going to make the clipping mask. It's going to fit my image inside of this box, which is pretty sweet. And I can be doing that with all kinds of different shapes. I can use circles, all kinds of these great things. And I could even, if you want to get really fancy, use the vector tool up here. The vector tool is just a pen that helps you draw shapes. So let's say I wanted to draw shapes like this. I could do that and connect it back just by clicking the mouse. I can go back and change this to black. And then I could drag this underneath. Same thing, select them both, moving a little bit quickly. But now I have a different shape, and I can start to think about using the different points. And maybe I'm thinking about, oh, maybe this kind of looks like the motion of a bus or something like that. Did I lose my B? Yeah, I lost my B. So your job then is going to be playing with the image and the text, and you might be able to use the text and image together in creative ways. And your job is then going to be like, how can we use this image to elaborate on the meaning of what you're interpreting in the word. You want to use your grid as a guide, and maybe I need to make, maybe the text is too big. Maybe I need to make it, a lot smaller. And just play around with how can I organize the information in a creative way using this guide. And if you want to know what it looks like without the grid, again, you can go to Command::. I can hide it. And the last thing I want to leave you with is to make sure that in your design, whatever you come up with in your graphic assemblage, you want it to be clear that you've used the grid and as a guide and some kind of organizational structure. So we should be able to look at your work and see the organization. But you want to be creative with that. You want to push the boundaries there. You don't want to make it look too square, but organized in the same way, in a creative way. Elaborate on the text that you've received. So this is just an introduction. I know that for many of you it'll be opening up Illustrator for the first time, but you've been champions so far. You're going to be doing a great job, and just take it one day at a time. You have people to help you. I'm here to help you, and we will get better and better.